All righty. Hey, this is Charlie with Contemplating the Cosmos, 4BZ Truth Channel. I actually have some very special guests, and I'm very excited. I'm actually, look, you unmuted. So we got Michael and Josh, brothers. I call them the Flat Earth Brothers, but Michael actually has his own channel, Grace and Truth Fellowship. So I just wanted to introduce these guys, and you know, it's a real pleasure that I can actually bring you on and kind of unpack some of the deep issues about reality, deep issues about just a lot of questions that I have, and we've kind of already touched base a little bit as we were checking in, but I again really appreciate you guys coming on, taking your time, and believe it or not, I'm actually a huge fan of both of you. You've been doing a lot of great work, and I've been following the Flat Earth Brothers channel for some time. So anyways, now I don't know if maybe we'll start with you, Josh, because you're the first one that I was familiar with as far as Flat Earth Brothers. But then again, I mean, Michael was part of it too, I guess.
Yeah.
But so maybe I'll just give you a kind of an opening statement as far as like your channel, a little bit about your background, and maybe both of you can kind of chime in. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks again so much for having us on. This is a great blessing. I've asked the Father many times to take us out of our comfort zone and to get us into fellowship opportunities like this. And I would not be here at all if it wasn't for him guiding me into truth and asking questions like, show us the truth about everything, you know, creation. Because there's always something, I think, in all of us that lets us ask that question of what else are we missing, because it feels like something's off. Especially now that things are going on in the world, the end time stuff, more people are waking up and going, what the heck is going on here? I know that something's up. And so your everyday average people are starting to wake up and question reality. So I think that's really why the harvest is starting to open up. And the channel, like I said, we're the brothers. And I started this channel, you know, thinking and kind of imagining that he and I would get together and do more videos like this. But our schedules are crazy, and so getting to do stuff like this hasn't worked out like we wanted to. And a lot of people think that he is me because our voices sound so much alike. So it's good to get on here and kind of clear that up, because a lot of people assume that I'm him. And one time he made a video for our channel, and it was the first video he made, and he put it on there. And I didn't get a chance to look at it. He just uploaded it and goes, here, I'm putting a video on the channel. And I was amazed. Everybody was like, this is the best video you've ever done. And he was over there like, oh, okay, see, there you go.
Yeah.
And that was a while back, but it's just kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, I'm glad.
Did I see that one, Michael? Or
it was the biblical Earth model you can't unsee. I think that's the name of it. Yeah. And everybody was like in love with that video, and I was like, that's funny. He puts out a video and immediately people are like, it's the best one you've ever made. And we've always been super competitive with each other until recent times. Now we work together, and so that's great.
Yeah. So you can iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. And we work right across the hall. So like from each other as teachers, we're like in two separate classrooms, but literally like 10 feet apart. So we're always, our best time to collaborate is like in between class periods. We're like, hey, dude, you got to put this, you know, do a video on this.
You guys are teachers?
Yeah, we teach math and science. I teach math. He teaches science.
Oh, sweet. Wow. I might have a lot of questions for you guys just in general, as far as how you have to, you know, I feel like the schools are the hardest hit when it comes to the, you know, C19 thing. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
It's a crazy environment right now with these kids.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad when you see what it does psychologically to people to be covered up and hiding. It sort of puts them in a state of fear, and that's just the hardest thing to watch for me, is because, you know, you love these children like they're your own, and you see them scared, and you see them withdrawing from each other and all the things that, you know, come along with that. And it's just it's tough to watch and see it unfold.
Yeah, I mean, I want to put this out there for any, like, my following is not flat earthers. I'll just say that right now. I mean, there's some people that I kind of was acquainted with, you know, when I interviewed a few flat earthers in the past. Anyways, I'm just going to put this disclaimer out there. Anybody that's willing to hold a position, it kind of actually, I'm wanting you to test your foundation a little bit here. And I want to actually reference one of the last videos you put out here. It's you must become a fool to lose the wisdom of the world. I actually love that title. So anybody that kind of has that knee jerk, I automatically saw thumbs down the second I saw somebody respond to the thumbnail that I put up for the live stream. And I don't know if they were looking at Flat Earth Brothers or something like that. And knee-jerk feeling,
it gets a lot of negative reactions. And I mean, even us personally, when we first found out, we were like, this sounds so stupid. Like, who would even question?
Everybody does.
Yeah. I think everybody goes through that.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. Like, you don't even want to talk about it. Like, there's family members and friends that I wouldn't even bring this up to, because I'm like, it would sink like a, iron balloon. It just wouldn't go over well.
Yeah, that's interesting that you guys are teachers, though. I mean, the fact that I don't know if this is something that you have to keep down, or do you discuss this with?
Josh actually got in trouble. He had a channel years ago called Fighting Fiction that he put out some, like, basically anti-evolution, exposing some hoaxes and things like that. And some of them got into geocentric belief systems and things like that. And he got told that if he put his name with those types of things online publicly and his face, that he could lose his job, and it was kind of a threat that he.
Yeah, they can't really tell you can lose your job. It's more of it's not going to look good. And so I don't broadcast it. It's one of those things. It's like, people always say, how can you still teach if it's against everything you believe in and that's what you're supposed to teach? Mm-hmm. But you can teach differently. You can teach to the standards, expose evidence, and do all these things without lying to your kids. It's not an easy juggling act to do, but it's something I feel like if I'm not there, someone else will be there teaching certain things as fact and not exposing the hoax side of it. And nothing conspiracy either. It's like there's evidence that's admitted to be fraudulent in the field of evolution, and a lot of the evidence they have sort of falls apart when you remove those key parts and you start looking at the timeline.
Isn't like the Piltdown Man someone that actually was a hoax and they still have books and stuff?
Well,
there's so many hoaxes that are still in textbooks. So you wouldn't even know that they'd exposed it. It's weird. It's intentional, and it's too many eyes looking at it for it to be overlooked.
Yeah. And my brother was actually the one that pointed that out to me. I was investigating this stuff, and he pointed out one that that was in our textbooks and on test, these pictures and images that all the science teachers around the world use as proof of a common ancestor. And he said this was over 100 years ago, and it's fake, and it's drawings, and actual pictures destroy these drawings. And that's what got me into this deep investigation. And then some miracles happened. And that's when I started asking questions, because I'd already had a miracle happen over like 7 years prior to that. And then when those miracles happened during my investigation, I said, that's when I said something is off with the creation narrative. Like I've been kind of meshing my worldview and my biblical view for so long. What am I missing? And that's when he opened the floodgates, and I found out that what the word tells us, that like you were saying, the video you saw recently, that if any man among you seemeth to be wise in the world, let him become a fool that he may be wise. Did not know what that meant. But then I started realizing that once you see a glimpse into the truth and what they're hiding and how crafty they are at hiding the truth, that the wisdom of this world is foolishness to our Father, what that really means. Because once you lose the wisdom of this world, you become someone who looks like a crazy person or a fool to this world. And so that verse right there is kind of like why we have to operate differently. I know I look like really dumb to like your viewers and people that have never looked into this. Yeah. And I don't come at them like, okay, I'm wise and now you're dumb. And a lot of people take that approach, and it's causing people to flee. So you have to be really careful. And we have a different approach when it comes to people who believe in the globe. We know we were just 3-4 years ago, and it does make a difference. A lot of people think it doesn't make a difference. It has changed my life entirely. And it's not the one truth or the only truth, but it's led countless thousands. I mean, I can't even count the testimonies I've had of people who have said, I've totally gone to the Father and I was an atheist for 45 years, or, or I'm 70 years old and I've been an atheist, or I'm a drug addict and now I've been set free because this has led me to the Father. And it's just, it never stops. The floodgates just opened up when this happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, as teachers, you have to go through a lot of scrutiny in your education process and trying to, obviously somebody that isn't intelligent couldn't make it as far as you did, in my opinion. But real quick, I want to point out, this is one of my listeners, that Adriana. She says she's not a flat earther, but I'm going to point out,
hey, Adriana,
the open-mindedness of my listeners. A lot of them are really into, spiritual, near-death experience. I think she loves near-death experience.
Oh, yeah.
So just be ready, Adriana. We're going to start talking about an awesome story. In fact, I really do want to talk about the flat Earth stuff, but I want to kind of just maybe briefly, or maybe just depending on where it goes, talk about the reason I actually reached out to you guys today.
Yeah.
I wanted to, recently you had an extreme loss, and I lost my mom 13 years ago, and it's still, sometimes it's not as fresh as it was, but you guys just lost your mom, and that's, one of the worst, hardest losses that you could have. But you posted a video about the whole, cancer situation. Maybe I'll just give you guys a chance to kind of tell the story briefly, and then and this can actually segue into kind of the whole big picture of, our Earth reality, and just the big picture of the government takeover or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff we could talk about, but I want to kind of put this out there real quick so that my listeners can kind of get their fill, I guess, as far as the things that draw them to my channel, I guess.
Yeah. Our mom passed away in April. It was the Saturday before Easter Sunday, and she had been battling cancer for a number of years, about 4 years, and she had seen some miracles along the way, because when they found the cancer, it was so advanced, and they told her she had like a few months. With any treatment they gave her, a few months was stretch, and she was ready to go plan her funeral. And we saw God. Josh and I, we had a lot of people praying with us, but we knew that God was going to heal her, and we were fully believing in that. And she was in remission within a year, and multiple times. But I think the world has a way of kind of robbing your faith, and kind of putting this doubt in your ear all the time, and telling you got to go through chemo, and you got to do this and you got to do that, and then you start, people kind of believe that. And I think my mom was in that boat. If she believed that this was kind of what she deserved, because she was never this great spiritual leader, and she never did things for God. And so near the end, she would say, don't pray for me to be healed. This is it for me. I'm going to die. And then the doctors were telling her, this is it for you. They were telling us to bring in hospice. But in the weeks leading up to her death, she was in a lot of pain, and she had not been able to eat for months, but she was praying a lot, and in the last years of her life, she spent a lot of time in prayer, and but she was still scared, like when you're faced with death and it's getting very close. She was very, I think, just traumatized and she didn't want to die, and she wasn't, a lot of people, you think, oh, hopefully they'll be ready and it'll be real peaceful. Well, she was a little bit scared, and then she said she didn't want to leave her kids, and she was young. I always think that when somebody passes away, they're going to be old. She was just turning 60 years old. She was still in her 50s, and she was this healthy, youthful person. Yeah. But about 3 days before she passed away, we had been spending a lot of time with her, like the whole family. A lot of us were right there because we didn't know what day was going to be the last day. And she was just in a constant hurt because the cancer was in her bones. It was all over her body. And she had said, I don't want to be on any more drugs. Take me off of everything, all the painkillers, the patches, everything they had her on. She said, I don't want to be on it. She said, I want to be sober when I see the Lord. So against all the doctor's advice, she went off the pain meds. And for a couple of days before she passed. And she was just in extreme pain at one day. And we thought, this is her last moment. We're all there. We're all praying with her. And one thing I know is that God doesn't bring death. He doesn't bring disease. That's something that he showed me in his word. And just by getting to know him, that biblically speaking, death is his enemy. So I was praying, and it was like, you want her suffering to end, but I'm like, God, bring her something, bring her peace. And I was kind of desperate at the moment. And we went in, and I sat down at the side of her bed, and I put my hand on her. And I was praying, not out loud. I was just praying inwardly. And I just said, God, show her your angels right now. Because I really didn't know what else to ask for. I just said, show her your angels and give her peace. And I was just saying this inwardly. And it was like, at that moment, she looks up, and she's looking around, and she just says, wow, they're beautiful. And my sister was across from us, and a couple of people are like, what is it? And she said, my angels are here, and they're beautiful. And my sisters are like, well, describe them. What do they look like? And I'm just in shock, because I know I just said, God, show her your angels. And here her eyes are open, and she's looking around, and she's seeing them. And we start thinking that this is it. Okay, you're seeing angels, and people see things before they pass. I think we all kind of know that happens. And that's what we thought was going to happen. But it wasn't that day that she passed. It wasn't that night. It wasn't the next day or the next. It was 3 days later, and she's still here with us. And eventually it came to the moment where she was going to pass. And the doctors saw those signs where the hands start to change color and the feet. And they said, she's got hours, So we all knew. And she began to know, because we told her, hey, the doctor, this doctor says that you only have hours to live. And she said, tell my angels to come back. She said, tell them I'm ready to go. And I thought it was crazy that she said that. And me and Josh were standing there kind of not knowing what to do. And she said, quit being lazy. She grabbed my wrist and said, go tell my angels to come back. And I thought, well, she really wants, I think she just felt like we had this connection with the angels. So we get up, and I go outside, and I said, Josh, we got to pray for these angels to come back, because we wanted her to know that we were going to do what she asked us to do. And we start praying, and we go back in the room, and she says, okay, after we're standing there with her, she says, they're back. And she starts looking around again, and she says, they're here, and y'all can leave now. She told us we could leave. She said, I need some privacy. So we were like, well, we're going to leave you. You're in your last moments, So we didn't really want to leave her, but something about that angel encounter gave her so much peace that she just was like, okay, y'all can leave. And you'd think you'd want your family right there. But the encounter, whatever it was, and the look on her face when she was seeing this angelic encounter, I just wish it brought me into the realization. I know there's a spiritual battle going on, and it really reminded me of Elijah when he was faced with this Syrian army. I don't know if you remember the story in Scripture, where the Syrian army was surrounding them, and he had a servant with him, and the servant was just terrified. He's like, "Oh my God, they're coming! What are we going to do?" And I think Elijah knew how afraid his servant was, and he said, "Lord, open my servant's eyes so that he can see." And when the servant's eyes were open, he saw that the hills were filled with these chariots of fires and these angels. And Elijah told him, "Greater is the one that's with us than the one that's with them." And I felt like there was such a connection with that particular scripture and my mom's story of just me in desperation. I wasn't as spiritually powerful maybe as Elijah, but I was just like, open her eyes so she can see her angels. And all of a sudden she saw them. And to me, it was like a realization with Elijah that it was already there when he said, open his eyes, Lord, so he can see.
Yeah, and it's funny. There's a lot of naysayers that will try to dismiss or debunk. And again, that's kind of the nature of our research. We want to dismiss and debunk a lot of things, but we're willing to face things as kind of go where the evidence leads. Now, this specific scenario is kind of a validation, in my opinion, because you know what you're praying at that moment.
Yeah.
And then for her to basically confirm what it was you were praying is a confirmation to me. And so that to me, and again, with all these different experiences that people have, and again, I'm not going to say everybody has, legit near-death experiences or whatever, in the sense that, because sometimes they conflict with the Bible and things like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you're always like, eat the meat, spit out the bones, try to sift through the things that can and I'm not trying to insert my bias or my belief system on everything because it is a filter of interpretation. So anyways, I don't want to take that rabbit trail necessarily, but I did want to point out that there are certain validations that can confirm, the reality of someone's experience. So anyways, go ahead.
I think that that whole experience though with her, it was funny, like leading up, even in the year that before she passed, there were things where she was, like I said, spending a lot of time in prayer. And God has given me and Josh both visions throughout our lives of just different things and things we didn't understand at the time. And I think years later, kind of were like, that's what that vision meant. But one time in particular, and this was only a few months before she passed away, we would always drive past this old store on the way to her house. And it was a store that had been shut down since the early 90s. But it was a store that dated way back to like the early 1900s, 1800s. And I would drive past it and I could see in the window there was like a Dr. Pepper machine, something you could still see in there, even though it was so run down that I was like, man, I wonder what that was like. And I would love to see that place reopened again. And one night, God gave me this vision of this specific store. And in his vision, and this store's been run down forever, but in this vision, I'm working in this store and I'm praying with someone in the back room and I'm on my way out and I'm happy. I'm like excited to be in fellowship with these people. Whatever is happening here, it was just awesome. And I remember I just heard God's voice just as clear as it can be. And he said, imagine you could do this every day for the rest of your life. And I was like, wow, that'd be so cool. And it's just like such this exciting thing to, love your job this much. And I woke up and I was in that shop and I knew where I was in that dream somehow. And the next morning, my mom calls me and she said, that old shop down there? And I'd never talked to her about the shop in my life. She said, that old shop down there, that Graysville Mercantile. And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, you won't believe this, but I just talked to the guy that owns it and he's going to sell it to us. And we've never bought a business. We've never bought a store. We've never had any of that stuff. And she's like, yeah, he gave me his word. And for this ridiculous price, he was going to sell it to her. And I almost hit the floor. I was like, Mom, I just had this vision from God that I was working in this abandoned building. And here she is calling me the next morning like, hey, Michael, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's quick confirmation right there.
But I think it's just God in us. There's such a spiritual battle. And I think we forget in the Old Testament, we hear that term that our Lord is the Lord of hosts, and it means the armies. And there is a spiritual army out there, a good side and a bad side. and the powers that be, the people in the high places, I think they try to keep us in the dark about it. Our whole life we're going on like, oh, that's just a story in the Bible. But they're conjuring up and they're working with this demonic side. The same thing you hear about it in the Old Testament all the time, all these people sacrificing their children and doing these just unspeakable things for these Old Testament gods. But that stuff didn't go away. And there's a reason they were doing those ceremonies. Why would somebody kill their own child? And you read about all these mass graves, archaeological digs, not just biblical text here, but of these mass child graves in these kingdoms and these rulers, that's what they did. And you're like, why would someone do that? Well, they're contacting this demonic side, and you got to do step A, B, and C for it to work. And they figured that out. That's why when the Pizzagate stuff came out and people were like, spirit cooking, why are they working with Marina Abramovich? Why are they, abusing children and trading children like they're, speaking of children in these, it just seems so weird to us, but it's an occult practice. And we think, oh, rich people are perverts. Well, it's bigger than that. It's spiritual.
Yeah, there's two sides. There's the drive to just have that attraction, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's the ritual abuse and the things that are behind like the closed doors. Gosh, there's some really dark stuff. And honestly, this is the kind of thing I've been getting into it pretty deep, but it's like, man, it's dark. It's like
lose a lot of sleep over it.
Yeah, I can't believe. And then it makes me feel like I need to lock my kids up and just like never let them go out of the world. It's like, don't ever talk to strangers or whatever. It makes more sense now. Like when our parents used to freaking say that to us when we were growing up. It's like, don't ever talk to strangers, danger or whatever. But but it's true. It's like it's almost like they're just shopping around. I heard a story where this freaking guy was like sitting up in the stands of this little league game. And this mom was like just watching her kid, and he's like, hey, is that your kid? And just some guy sitting there, and but he was like talking like, yeah, your kid's cute. and he's like a 12-year-old boy, and it's like, really, that's freaking creepy.
Wow.
And I don't know, but that's what my wife was telling me, and she gets on these forums where people are talking about this stuff all the time. I can't keep up with it because it's just like, you know, I feel like flat Earth is a lighter topic.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's easier for me to unpack that stuff because even though it really exposes the same people, in my opinion. So that's the other thing is I really want to get into how all these people in Hollywood and, you know, big business and government and all that, you know, how they're all linked together and they're tied together in the spiritual. And you were talking about, like, you know, child sacrifice and stuff like that. That stuff is just alive, and, you know, it's like very predominant. I mean, they're what do they call that? That stuff that they extract from kids.
Yeah, the adrenochrome stuff.
Adrenochrome, that's what it is. Oh my gosh! Like, people are. I don't see how that's even real. It just sounds
it doesn't.
Fictional story. I don't know. I mean, anyways, but maybe you can give some more thoughts on that. But sorry, we're taking a rabbit trail a little bit away from
It's funny. My channel is more about like the biblical side and the spiritual side of things, instead of just like the earth kind of flat earth stuff. But I was looking into the Old Testament, and I was trying to understand, because I think people look at God in the New Testament and they're like, man, Jesus showed us what God was like. And he was like always loving and forgiving and peaceful and just like healing everybody. Like, Jesus didn't go around killing people all the time. He was like saving people nonstop. And he's like, I always do my Father's will. So people look at the Old Testament and they're like, what in the world? Like, this God seems angry. He seems like all. And I was asking God as I did a series called Is God Always Good? And there was a basic like New Testament kind of version of it. And then I did an Old Testament version. And I was like, God, show me why, like you would say, put this entire race of people to death, like put these, you know, kill all these people. And I thought it just didn't seem right. But when I started asking God to show me why that was, it was like, look at what they were doing. They were sacrificing their children. They were doing these things that were unspeakable to God's people. And I was just like, okay, well, let me look more into that. And all of a sudden I start finding out that, you know, these people who were sacrificing their children to Baal and Moloch, it's still alive and well today. And that's, it's kind of the hidden part of history. It's the stuff that it's coming out now. And people are like, oh, all of our celebrities on this island, what were they doing over there? Maybe they just didn't know. And they were just there for fun or cotton candy. Yeah. But it's like, no, it's way deeper than that. These kind of
it reminds me of like growing up in like Sunday school or whatever. And it's like, you know, it talked about like, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not bow down to Baal or the statue or whatever. Yeah. It's like the whole thing about bowing down and worshiping Baal didn't make sense to me when I was a kid. It's like, why would I do that? That's weird. And but now it's like, you know, it makes more sense because they're hiding in plain sight, and we're worshiping something that makes sense to us because it's Baal undercover, I guess you could say. Yeah. And that's things that I kind of want to point out to people is that, you know, things don't always appear as they actually are. And that's why we're trying to unravel the mysteries here. And, like the shape of the earth.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, about that, yeah, a lot of people, and me included, we don't see the clues that the enemy leaves. I think it's like there's this rule that they have to leave a clue so that we've seen it, and it's up to us whether or not we accept it. And it just seems like a blinding spirit, almost like some spell was put over us. And when you start investigating the model, I mean, even its name goes against what the Father told us. And I think it was the book of Exodus where he says, and in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. Well, when we go to school and we start singing all the names of these, what were once known as the chief stars, now they're known as planets, they were prophesied, I might go into that later, in the book of Enoch, to leave their orbital paths and deceive mankind. Well, they called them the chiefs of the stars. Well, when these things are sung about by us as little children, before we can prove all things, when we're too young and innocent, we can speak these names of these other gods because that's what they're named after. And to us, it's wisdom. I could remember being proud. You run home, you're like, listen to this new song I could sing. And you sing the Order of the Planets, and your parents are like, good job, now you're wise. Well, the name of the model itself, it's not the Father's model. It's not God's creation. It's Helios-centric, as Helios as in their sun god. And even the word solar system, Sol, S-O-L, comes from one of their, all-powerful sun gods, Sol Invictus. And the sun god worshiping never stopped. It's still going on. It's just changed forms. Our Statue of Liberty says inside it, the new Colossus. Well, the old Colossus was the Greek sun god Helios, their statue that they had in tribute to him. But those lies and helping us break the word is gone on forever. I mean, even the days of the week are all named after and paying tribute to these gods, and they've changed the calendars. They've done so many things to sort of hide the truth. And it's amazing now that this awakening is happening, because so many people are waking up to this thing, like the shape of the earth, its measurement. It's if it is a spherical object and that's what the Father made, that I could believe that and go along with that, because he could make a sphere in a vacuum moving at whatever speed. And the fact that we can't feel those speeds is amazing if that was how he created it. But you start looking closer and you see things like the curve. It has a mathematical formula of 0.666 feet per mile squared. The speed, 66,600, triple sixes. And you look at the tilt, because the ball they put us on is tilted. And that tilt itself is 23.4. Well, if you break that down into 90 degrees, there's 23.4. The remainder is 66.6 degrees to get to the full 90 degrees within that tilt. And they put it right there. Yeah. How did we not see that? Because everybody's like, oh, the mark of the beast, the 666, and they're all about that. I didn't see it. So I'm not saying I'm wise. I didn't see it until somebody brought it to my attention. Like, maybe that's Helios. Maybe that's not the Father's model. I would have never thought. And of course, when we're educated and we find this stuff, there's two options. We're given it's a globe, or like our dumb ancestors believed, there's this edge you could fall off of. Not one time did they bring up there's an expanse, a firmament that all civilizations believed in. Never heard of it, not one time. So I never was given that option to go, wait, there's another option to the flat disc? Never. And so I think that's why we laugh at it. And when we first hear about it, like a lot of your subscribers are now, you think, that's nonsense. There's not this disc, and there isn't. The earth has a foundation. It is not moving. The commandments talk about, not making graven images. And then it speaks about making graven images of things in the heaven above, which he called the firmament, heaven. We're making these graven images of planets and stuff. And he says, or things beneath and in the water beneath the earth, or something like that, as if there's like actually a beneath the earth and there's water. Yeah. And at creation, there was water, and there was the flood, and the floodgates, and the water came up and it went back down. Like, there's all these clues in the word, and we just seem to miss those clues. And when you look at them, it's like, maybe I should investigate. And that's really what we encourage people to do, is there's two things, prove all things. That's kind of the hard way to find the truth, or to just let God be true. But if you prove all things, you'll find out the Father was telling the truth in the word in its entirety. And pretty much every man is a liar, and not always on purpose. Teachers, when I first started teaching, I had a globe in my hand. I got thrown into a classroom. I really wasn't ready for this job. I was, parapro, but teachers left. We had 2 teachers leave, and I was in a science classroom with a globe teaching the Coriolis effect. And so I was like, golly, I'm so smart. Look at me now. I'm teaching this stuff that I've been taught. And so from there until now, I've had miracles happen even when I believed that I lived on a globe. And so people, say it's not a salvation issue. Yes, I believe I was saved, and had my life ended then, I was still saved believing in the globe. But once I was exposed to the truth, to go back and to believe that and to teach that is something I cannot do. And as I've seen the fruits of that, it has, the part of the prayer that I said when the Father was speaking to my mom, like he was mentioned earlier, in the early days when I was praying about that, and he did speak to her, I started asking those questions, and I said, I don't care how crazy the truth is, just show me the truth about creation. I want to know. And I don't know why I used the word crazy, but it did sound crazy once I started looking into it. But it was just almost instantly the things that we couldn't see, the mark of the beast and all those things that was hidden in the model, and the deceivers, finding out that I'd been lied to was humbling. You know, I knew the moon landings were fake. I mean, it doesn't take a detective to figure that out. We were Skyping the moon, you know, over half a century ago, but never would have thought that I could have been deceived about what I lived on. I just felt that it seems so innocent. It's a blue marble. It's this beautiful thing. And it's not as innocent as it sounds. It's part of a Big Bang model. It's part of something that has an agenda that's not going to stop. There's more deceptions that will come, and they are all geared on getting us ready, getting people to basically be slaughtered in the war that's to come, because they're going to be on the wrong side thinking the wrong things.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of what I feel like we're all kind of, this is another step in that proverbial ladder of ascension or whatever, you know, trying to understand things. It's almost like you have to jump through certain levels or hoops to understand the next rung of information. And, you know, it's funny, like we were talking about the, you know, things that are kind of out in the open that they've revealed to us, yet we're not paying attention. And, you know, it's weird to me, like there must be some higher order or a higher government that sanctions or regulates that kind of thing. It's like, why would they give themselves that kind of rule that allows us to be given information that we could find? And
I was listening to a guy that kind of shed some light on that for me just recently. He's been investigating who we call the Illuminati or the Cabal, whatever you want to call them, for years. And he said one of the rules that they live by is that if they reveal to us what they're going to do, like you say, Event 201, like this COVID-19 thing, there was an event months, like right before the coronavirus, they had a practice coronavirus run, and they even had fake news agencies involved. And they said, "Oh, how many people would die if we had coronavirus? You know, how would the news respond?" And these fake news things that they just made for this event were identical to the real ones. I mean, what they were saying, should we close down global economies? Should we do all this stuff? Well, he said that what they will do is they will broadcast what they're doing. They'll show it in movies. They'll tell us about it somehow. They will just telegraph everything they're doing. And if we don't do something about it, they said that in their belief system, that elitist Illuminati system, that we're giving them permission to roll over us and leave us in this bondage and do these things. And I think that was kind of an interesting angle to hear, was that they're following that rule, that if we're complicit, if we just say, oh, well, there was Event 201 predicting a pandemic that we haven't even had in over 100 years, like, and you just randomly happened to do a worldwide pandemic practice run right before the real one, like people aren't suspicious. Like, how can we not notice what they're doing?
I just posted a video. I almost want to share it with you guys real quick. It's just, well, I'll just explain it to you real quick. There's basically, you know, a guy that had a cell phone where he's like, I got to show you guys something. And he's like, you wouldn't believe this. And he pushes play. And basically some dude's like, hey, Alexa, was the government involved with starting coronavirus or something like that? And I mean, you got to hear it like from Alexa. Basically, the you know, the computer voice is saying basically like, yeah, the government was involved. They did the simulation of Event 201, and they actually released this coronavirus and got away from them. And they anyways, the way it was explained is like it was intentional, but it wasn't intended to be as massive as it was or something.
Yeah, I think they with 9/11 just now happening, the anniversary of that, I think a lot of people in the truth community, the people who know, like, some people were saying, oh, well, there's no virus or it's fake, but like really there, you know, if you look at 9/11, there really were buildings that went down. 3, there was the 2 twin towers, and then there was it World Trade Tower 6 or 7 that went down. Also the third building that went down that I didn't even know until years later, like, wait a second, there was another one that just collapsed, like controlled demolition. You know? And it's obvious now, looking back in hindsight, like, how did we think that a plane could cause those buildings to fall that fast? You know, and especially this other building that just had a small fire and it collapsed just like at the speed of gravity, just boom, you know, and we're like, oh, I guess it just happened because terrorists are bad people. But same thing with coronavirus. It's like, would they really release something real? Absolutely. You know, the fact that $6 billion, that huge stimulus that came out in the beginning that we all got, that $1,200.
Yes.
That entered Congress in January. So it's like, wasn't it for the coronavirus? and I was looking it up. Some guy did a video on that and was like, do you guys realize that this huge bailout that was for the coronavirus, it was called that, entered the Congress? And you can look these bills up and look when they're entered.
Like in January.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, that was before the pandemic. So yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot of loose ends. It's like really
weird stuff.
Yeah, it just seemed to happen so fast. And I remember looking, as a truther, you kind of have, hidden accounts where you socialize with people who are also truthers, because you can't come out of the closet to the mainstream just yet. And so it's like they're sharing stuff, and it's all this fear stuff. Like, you remember when you looked at the early videos of this, I don't know if you guys saw it, but people were just dropping dead in the streets. They'd be standing there on a corner and just fall over. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is coming to America. Like, that's kind of what you have. But you don't see that. You don't see people falling over in the streets, thankfully, here in America. But you really don't see much of anything that's real. You don't see real patients or anything. You just hear that it's this elevated level of what it is. But, even the test, you can test nobody and send in the test and it'll be a positive. And so as long as we have tests that produce false positives, they can keep this going for as long as they want. Even if there is nothing out there, with tests that produce false positives over 50% of the time, is what they're saying, that this will never go away until we're all vaccinated. And people just go, okay, we're vaccinated, no longer going to get a test. And then it goes away.
Yeah. That whole vaccine thing. And honestly, I didn't really know if I wanted to talk that much about this topic, but at the same time, and this is the one that's
I'm tired of it.
The bottom line is, so we were talking about the things that are kind of out in the open in plain sight. I mean, let me just say this, if you guys haven't been privy to this information, but this is Bill Gates or Microsoft that put out the patent W 2020-060606 ID 2020. It's a cryptocurrency system that is directly related to your body activated. Like if you're sick or something, you would actually communicate through a freaking microchip in your hand or your forehead or I don't even know. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things to this that it definitely has all the precursors of the mark of the beast, if you ask me. And it all ties in. I'm telling you, I feel like this whole flat Earth movement was really the freaking launch pad that started all the crazy shenanigans that's happening now. I've had a lot of videos deleted on YouTube. I've had 9 videos now, and my channel's definitely censored, and it's not a huge channel. I mean, I have but a lot of the videos I'm just like reposting or mirroring. So I actually feel like any information that needs to get out there, I'm just going to mirror it, and I don't want to spend a week working on this video that is just saying the same exact thing as another video. So it's like so that's why I appreciate this community, is because we're just really trying to get the information out there. And so real quick, if people aren't familiar out in the chat, I work for a company. I'm not going to give away a lot of information just because I'm I'm not allowed to give certain information about it. But I can kind of be very discreet and vague or cryptic. But I'll try to, I'll just tell you right now, I'm helping build the infrastructure of surveillance and, world communications and things like that. I'm very familiar with balloons being launched on satellites. I'll just say that right now. And there's a lot of people that know that on my channel, but again, my channel has been kicked down by YouTube repeatedly, and it's hard for me to get the word out there to people. Yeah. Anyways, so I appreciate you guys, by the way. I want to be part of this community. And so anyways, so the bottom line is I can see behind the scenes what we're starting to ramp up to, and they're going to put up and again, the satellites thing, I'm not really sure what that is. I mean, it could all be balloons. There might be something that they could launch things up to, and it just kind of sticks and starts floating around. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole ether or something. I don't really know what to think of it. I mean, the bottom line is, you know, SpaceX and NASA and all those, they're launching stuff up there, and you know, I don't know if it's all just for show, you know. So, you know, but there is a mass graveyard of these, you know, rockets or whatever that end up in the ocean over in the Atlantic Ocean. I heard there's an actual graveyard of
there is.
Point Nemo. Look up Point Nemo, and it's probably why they made the cartoon Finding Nemo, because that's where it's a spacecraft graveyard, and that's probably where they all go. It's a central location. It's the largest area out there that's uncharted in the ocean, so you can go out there and look that up. Point Nemo is exactly where it's at. And our video we have, if you're skeptical about the firmament and a motionless Earth, look into our playlist of not just the proofs, but you can actually see video of the firmament, the expanse above us. You can actually see video of it, and that's what really blew my mind early on. And
that is the thing that really hooked me into your channel. I'll be honest with you. The whole sprites thing, where you can see the sprites coming up, and it looks like shooting down this like sparks or something out of the firmament. It's freaking crazy.
That video got stopped and deleted from YouTube right away too.
Yeah, I had to remake it. I had to remake it because I put it out there when the Father showed this to me. I kept looking at the footage, brightening it up, and then I started seeing these waves move across this expanse, which was many miles above the clouds. You know, clouds max out around 14 miles, and this is like 70 plus, 100. Who knows how many miles it is up there? But they were at night, and they filmed it on accident. These are honest scientists trying to film something that no one knows anything about. And these things are so powerful. I mean, they're beautiful, but you can only see them with like slow motion cameras. And they had those special fancy cameras pointed at it. And it was just something spectacular to see them coming out. But we put that video out instantly. It's things going viral because people are seeing what we're seeing, and we put it out there in a way that they could figure out what it was. And within like 3 days, like 300,000 views, or 2 days or something like that. I mean, just like, I was like, this is going to have 1 million views. You know, people are just testifying like, oh my gosh, I'm in tears. I've never investigated this, and seeing that great expanse is amazing. And so,
by the way, I wanted to point out that this link that I just posted from all 3 of my streaming locations is your guys' video for the "You Must Become a Fool to Lose the Wisdom of the World." That actually features exactly what you're saying, and that's the sprites. It's freaking crazy. If you guys haven't seen it, freaking go to that video and watch it. It's really good.
Yeah, it'll answer a lot of questions. And it's kind of lengthy. It was from a conference I did that was about an hour long, and I shortened it as much as I could to about 45 minutes. But it covers that, the firmament, the motions of the Earth. It goes really deep. I wanted to kind of have it's trying to summarize 3 years, 4 years worth of research and findings and things that are revealed to us into one video. And that will definitely cover all of that if you want to save some time and not have to browse different playlists and videos. So I appreciate you doing that, Charlie, because that's one of those things. It was a lot of work, but it was actually a lot of fun putting that together. And I learned something new every time I compile that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that might be one of the things that I like to point out the most, is because it's hard for me to really point to the heavens, so to speak, for proofs of the shape of the Earth. Because for me, I feel like the strongest evidence was looking over a large surface of water, and water always finds its level, and you could see things that are way too far. I mean, I've seen some things that were like, you know, like this one guy was on a hill and you could see like 300 miles away or something like that.
Yeah, like 275 miles. And it's like, okay, so obviously the body of water and the land, for the most part, is because the Father called the dry land Earth. And so dry land is Earth. And the waters, he called them seas. And so when we hear Earth, we automatically think this, you know, spherical object. Well, Earth is just dry land. You know, he sits above the circle of the dry land, the circle of the Earth. And so a lot of times we get kind of misled when we hear the word Earth. But like you said, the proof that got it for you, it's hard to prove things just by looking up. And a lot of people get lost in that when they always talk about the stars. Like there's a video that just came out. This person shot a laser in Canada across the water. Oh, it was like 16.5 miles, but the camera height was like 2 inches. Like they put the camera in the sand on the shoreline, and you could still see the laser, and the laser's swiveling. Okay, so it's not like the light's being curved. You can actually see the fulcrum of the laser where they're turning it, so you could tell you're actually looking at the laser. And a lot of
people would say that that's a prism effect or something.
Yeah.
Like it's getting the moisture in the air and it's causing it to curve because so the person on the receiving end or the video or whatever that's seeing light on the other side would say, that it's probably, see, I don't, that's real speculative. You can't really prove that light bends like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the laser, you could actually see it was curving upwards too. It was like it was curving, but it was curving upward to where, like, if you were to raise your elevation, you would be able to see it even better. It was curving upwards, but that was just like one of like, there's further distances we've had than that. That's like a small distance over surfaces of water. We've had, the long distance world record photo. There was over 3/4 of a mile of missing curve. And you see that, and it's like, that's obviously missing curve that should be there. And then you kind of have these other questions like, okay, that's what about the stars? And it's like, no matter how the stars move, because they have prescribed paths, except for the ones that abandon their prescribed paths that were talked about in Enoch, that's not going to make the water curve. The water's going to be flat no matter what the stars are doing, or, you turn your ceiling fan on and it starts spinning. If you put lights on it, that doesn't make your house curve. I mean, that's just how your fan moves, and you put one in the other room going the opposite direction. It doesn't really change the shape of your house whatsoever. Having round light bulbs doesn't make your house floor round, and a lot of people, that's one of the things that, well, the planets are round. And I get that. When I was teaching, and right before the awakening, my favorite movie of all time scientifically was the Martian with Mark Watney, send them back to Earth. And I remember thinking about that because I would show it to my kids and we'd do science experiments. And I remember thinking, man, what would happen if you were on Mars and then, like, the Father came to gather us up, or the sun returns, and what's going to happen? Like, what if I'm there? I'm stuck there. Like, are they going to know I'm there if I'm this astronaut? And that's where I'm at. And when I woke up, I was like, oh wow, that makes sense. And that's how every eye is going to see. I think with a possible false return scenario happening soon, or the alien deception, or whatever they tell us is the return, if they're faking one. Every eye seeing him is not going to happen. And they'll go, well, we've got technology, everybody can see him on their iPhone or whatever. And that's kind of how my worldview was back then, before I woke up, was how's every eye going to see around the ball? People in Australia are going to, he's just going to come around to them eventually, or what? But it's going to be something so great and so grand that every eye will see. And it's not going to work on the heliocentric model. And so that's where believing in that, I think, will lead so many to be deceived.
Yeah, I've seen some things that were kind of a struggle for me to accept, even with the flat Earth. At some points, I felt like, because I studied the sun and the moon, and just kind of watched. I had my video camera fixed on the moon, and I had to readjust it to where, because the moon starts kind of going out of the view, and because I've seen some weird stuff. I mean, I actually, when I had a filter on my camera, and I had it out on the sun, and I saw a little freaking thing go across the sun really slow, and it almost looked like some sort of craft of some kind. And it was like up, like in a certain direction that wasn't like an airplane. If I saw that far out and the airplane's like little tiny thing, the airplane would have been more like eye level at that point. But I was looking up at the sun. But anyways, so it kind of leads me to believe that there's some sort of technology that's out there that we. So like I don't believe in extraterrestrials, but I believe in extra or interdimensional beings or whatever. And I believe, so this is kind of one of those things where I believe that we're in a realm. We're not necessarily, maybe there's something that just much more vast that's beyond. And I'm not talking about like the outer ice ring or something. I'm talking like that's still part of our realm. It probably is just like we're in this capsule that is like massive and from our perspective, but it's really just a blip in reality that goes beyond like the vastness of this reality. So this is kind of where I get into the spiritual side of things and think there's beings that are interacting and intermingling like with our dimensional realm. And I really want to in Baal and all these things, all these beings that are being worshipped by these higher up people. It's like I'm not going to just dismiss that they're worshiping some figment of their imagination or something. I'm saying that there's probably some sort of reptilians or some sort of whatever it is that's pulling the strings on the other side. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at the highest level, it seems that people talk about the Rothschilds, who seem to own almost every banking system in the world banking system, and it's like they don't leave their house, and they have a chair in their room specifically for Lucifer. These people are in communication, and I heard a guy was saying that like the adversary, the devil, whatever you want to call him, is kind of limited to one place, whereas God's kind of can be everywhere. But they said he relies on these people who are demonically charged or doing these kind of things in a spiritual world. And one of the things that I think really kind of interested me was I was doing some occult research into the Old Testament. It just leads you down all these different kinds of rabbit holes. But I got to studying this occultist, Aleister Crowley, who I had kind of heard a little bit about. But he talked about, and this guy was sick. He called himself the Great Beast 666, and I've got a video on him specifically. But he talked about conjuring up this being, this demon, physical demon, and it looks like what we would say would be a present-day alien, these big eyes and things like that. And he said, today we call them demons. Tomorrow they're going to call them something else. And there have been documented encounters with these so-called aliens, abductions, where people use the name of Jesus, and the encounter ended just like that. And it was like hundreds and hundreds of documented cases of these people being abducted by this being. And why would an alien from another planet react to the name of Jesus or Yeshua? Why would they react to that? And I got to looking at people who followed Crowley, that followed him today. And there was this one guy he's actually a writer for comic books for DC Comics. And there's a movie on Netflix that he wrote the story for. I think the show's called Happy. And the guy's his last name is Morrison. I can't remember if his first name was Zach. I don't know if I'm making that up. But he was at a conference called the Disinformation Conference. And he's talking about Crowley and saying, if you do the things Crowley says to do in his book, things happen. And then he goes on to say that he intentionally, and he went somewhere and got abducted by aliens. And that's why, and I was like, wait a second, here he is calling them aliens, but he's following Crowley and saying, do the things in his book, which Crowley said sacrifice children, vampirize children, sexually, all this nasty stuff. And this guy's bragging about following that book openly. And here he is, this big timer making movies for Netflix, writing these comic books, for years for DC. He's a higher up over there. And he's bragging about being a Crowley follower and intermingling with these demonic forces. So it's kind of like, how are they operating at those highest levels in those A-list circles? What are they communicating with? And I think they're a little more open with it now than they were. And of course, now it's like Hollywood is silent because people are waking up to what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, the silence is almost deafening.
Yeah. Holy crap. Sorry, I got distracted by this. She said she was.
Oh, yeah. Good night. Good night.
Good night. Thanks for joining us.
Pray about it.
Go to my channel, Grace and Truth Fellowship, and look up the biblical Earth model. It'll answer a lot of questions if you have them.
Yeah, and she said to me in the past that the flat Earth doesn't appeal to her, and usually what people say to me, it's like, I'm just not interested.
It's crazy, it's a crazy like hippie in the woods going, "Hey man, it's flat," and then you're like, "Let me just debunk this. Let me look into it." And then of course you have all those things like, "What about these round planets that are actually out in space?" And then you're like, "What about?" And you have all these questions that you have to mentally, I think, get past before you can even digest it. Like somebody told me, like, my thing was like, "What about circumnavigation?" Somebody went around the globe.
Same.
And you're like, "Wait a second." Really? Somebody said, "Well, you can go in a circle on a racetrack. That doesn't make it a globe." You can. Nobody ever circumnavigates north to south because you're always going to hit a wall. And once I realized that these things in the heavens, because I have a big high power telescope, and I was always trying to look before I knew the shape of the earth. I was looking at these planets. I was looking at Mars, and I was like, it just looks like a light. It just looks like a luminary. It doesn't look like a solid object. And I kept thinking that, but never really knowing that. It just didn't look like someplace you could go live. And I kind of noticed that about a lot of those heavenly lights, that it was like they don't seem like solid objects reflecting light from a sun.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that kind of, I mean, if you look close enough at like, because you can't see with your naked eye, like Venus, or I mean, you can see it like a light, but can you see the little crescent when because it seems like a lot of the quote unquote planets are like they have crescents at some points.
Yeah.
But see, these are the things that kind of throw me for a loop. But I almost wonder if like some things are like set up in a way to where we believe that we're. So like God said that all this is set up for signs in the heavens or whatever. And anyways, so that's kind of where it kind of throws me for a loop every once in a while when I start thinking about what's in the heavens. But then the whole sprites thing. I really want people to go see the sprite, because that's freaking crazy.
Yeah. Be skeptical. Check it out. Just look at it. Take your time. Look at it. No rush. Like, I mean, time is running out, but look at this stuff and just pray, because we don't need a teacher to tell us what's true. We have the Holy Spirit. The Word tells us that we don't need anyone else to show us these things. We have the Holy Spirit. We have that gift. So just take a look at it as if, with open eyes and just a humble heart, humble, and ask the Father to show you the truth. Don't be misled by us. We could be deceivers. Let the Holy Spirit and the Father show you what's true. And I will warn you, if you do that, like we said in that video he shared with you guys, be prepared, because when you find the truth, it's that foolish wisdom of this world is going to be exposed, and it's going to make you in turn become a fool to this world. And so it is a trade-off, but it does set you free. And when you go out at night and you're praying like the Messiah did, and you're looking up at the stars, you see true creation and not the great distances that were between us and the Father as we're hurling through space on that, that model that's full of all those false God names and stuff. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. If you want proof, look at, the flatness, that's good. But if you want to actually see the firmament, it's there. And that video will show it.
If you guys can see the pictures over on the, is it showing up?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, so like here's an example of it. It's almost like illuminated above, and it's like it almost looks like a surface of something that's being illuminated on the top of those lightning sprites, and like this too. But a lot of these pictures, it looks like they're coming literally out of like a cloudless sky. I don't know if you see.
Yeah, because they're many miles above the clouds. That's the clouds are, probably 7, 8, 9 miles, and those are way up there. They look like they're coming from the stars. The book of Enoch says that when he was shown things by the angels, that he saw that some of the stars would rise up to become lightning, but wouldn't lose their form. I thought that sounded so science fiction crazy that just almost discredited the entire book. But then when I had this memory, it was like the Father revealed to me, hey, there's the sprites that you saw one time. Look at that again. And so I just pulled it up and looked at it and put it in super slow motion, and you start seeing waves move across this expanse. Why would a wave?
The stars were,
and the stars would flicker before this shot out of them. They would flicker, and the word sprite means disembodied spirit. That's a weird name to give this phenomenon. Yeah, and I thought that's odd, disembodied spirit. I always thought it was a drink, Sprite. But it goes way deeper. And the firmament, guys, if you haven't looked into this, there are declassified documents. We have a video about that too, and many people do, about the firmament, about a motionless Earth. CIA documents and NASA. And NASA has documents.
Russia put them out too.
Yeah, Russia talking about the firmament.
I have a video all about that.
Yeah, so it's really cool to see. They were talking about the firmament in these documents, you know, the shape of it, how the sun moves. It talks about the sun moving and that the sun is faster in certain locations. Well, if we're rotating, that wouldn't even be an issue, you know, and it brings you back to the Bible where he said the sun stood still in the book of Joshua. The sun stood still so they could fight this battle and win. If the earth had stopped moving, the battle would have ended on both sides. I think they would have been wiped out. Not that the Father couldn't somehow slow it to a stop without the water spilling over the ball. The Father can do all sorts of amazing things. I'm not making fun of anyone who believes that, because when I believed in that, I just would always be amazed at, like, wow, we're on this spherical object and the water's stuck to it on everywhere. And, you know, like, it's holding down all these trillions of gallons of water, but these little gnats are flying around just fine. And we're walking around perfectly fine. Like, I was amazed by that. I had no clue that he told us that this earth has a foundation. It's not moving. You know, I had a clue, but I thought it was just figurative.
Well, I think you just kind of read past it because you're not looking for it, you know. And the way I was, like, when I heard that the sun makes its circuit in the book of Psalms, like a champion running its course on a race, you know, like, wait, the sun goes in a circle? I thought we were going around the sun and it was in the middle, you know. But you don't think about it. You just read it as poetry. And you know, sitting above the circle of the earth, you just think of it as, oh, well, it's the circle, it's a globe. And you just kind of move on. Or when you hear the firmament, he is a solid object, you're like, well, I always thought the firmament was just sky. So I read right past it. It was just this atmosphere. But we're about to put out a video with some testimonies from some Russian, speaking of Russian documents being leaked, some older cosmonauts that had supposedly been to space now coming out. One of them saying the Earth is flat because somebody asked him, is the Earth a sphere in space? And he goes, actually, the Earth is flat. And then he says, I didn't expect you to ask me that question. Of course, he's speaking in Russian. But, you know, people always say, like, well, how could all these astronauts hide it? Well, they're coming out with it. And another Russian, Igor, God, I can't remember how to say his last name, Russian last name, Petrovic or something. But he came out and said, we've never been to space. And you could tell the host is kind of like, okay. And he's like, if anybody tells you that, they're lying. So they're saying it's flat. We've never been to space. And the first guy to ever reach the stratosphere, Auguste Piccard, this was before NASA. He says the Earth looked like a flat disc, or a flat dish with upturned edge. And he was the first guy to ever reach that high. He didn't have a fisheye lens to take these fake pictures with. So it's it kind of piques your interest. And when you hear a guy like Admiral Byrd, who was exploring Antarctica, say there's an area of land that's bigger than the U.S. that's never been explored, and then, oh, wait, all of a sudden Antarctica is off limits to everybody. Nobody can explore it. And all these nations come together, these world powers, and say, nobody should be going to Antarctica to explore beyond the 60th parallel. You know, it's like all of a sudden they need to stop. Well, why? Well, if it's just ice and penguins, why is it not just free for all? You know?
Yeah. Antarctica is kind of definitely an anomaly that they're hiding something for sure.
There's something in Antarctica, and I don't even want to know what they've been building there for 60 years.
Do you guys follow Veritas TV with Mel?
I have seen some of his stuff, yes. Yeah. Or his earlier stuff, yeah.
You know, he actually posted a video where he had to translate somebody that was speaking Spanish. Do you remember that one?
No, I didn't see that one.
So he was interviewing somebody that was in Spanish, and he basically had to go back over it and speak English for both sides. It was a little weird, but but the story that he was telling was very, like, it was kind of along the lines of this, and that is the Antarctic exploration. He was actually contracted to go down to Antarctica, and basically, I don't know what he did, but he was with a group of people, and it was the government hired him, or like the military or something. And he went down there, and he was just kind of on this expedition for something. And he actually, off in the distance, could see this like weird structure that was like, it almost looked like it was floating. But then when he got closer to it, it was like a cube. And it was literally floating above the earth, or maybe it wasn't floating, but it looked like it was something. I forget, but he ended up going close, or everybody was like freaking out, like, this is like not human. And he ended up getting up to it, and somebody tried to touch it. And anyways, I'm not really doing this story justice, but the point is there was these beings that were like electrical beings. They were like made out of electricity, came out, and basically were communicating to him telepathically. Wow. And saying, we told you, your people to never to come here. And anyways, it's almost like there was guardians at the gate that were like preventing them from anywhere. It's crazy, but I don't
gotta wonder what's over there. What was so secret? Or what did they find that was so incredible that they're like, nobody else can come here? You know?
Well, world powers, they only agree on two things peacefully: guarding this place and not letting anyone go there. And then there's the space. They all work together. They're so happy. They're like kumbaya. They're holding hands. They're like, we all get along with this. And
NASA controls every space agency in the world, and they're all together on it.
It's worth every penny, and it's not about money. And if you look into the pop culture, they were, when they came about during Operation Paperclip, we were taking these Nazi scientists like von Braun, who became one of their co-founders pretty much. Before that, it was the Air Force that was exploring the space, and they were sending people up in balloons and going way up there, about as far as we go now with balloons, about 120,000 feet. Yeah. And so I reached out to one of those guys, Kittinger, or Joseph Kittinger, I think's his name. And he was, before Baumgartner, the guy that did, or Felix, before him, he was the world record holder of how the highest any guy's ever gone. And I think that him and that Felix guy, if the Felix guy really did go that high, not very many people have been that high. And
yeah, but
they're not really going there.
Remember when he's like, I could see the curvature of the earth, or whatever you did. And then freaking Neil deGrasse Tyson later says, you can't see the curvature of the earth. You like fixed on a peaceful.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, because I asked him, I sent him an email. I said, I'm a huge fan of your work. You guys were awesome. That was the Air Force before NASA. And I didn't realize they had even sent us a picture of the stars from one of those balloons on the Stargazer. And this was back in the 60s, before NASA sent anything, or the 50s. I'm trying to remember. First time we ever saw the stars from space. And it looked like a light bright set from the 80s and 90s. The light brights where you poke holes, you put the little pegs in and they light up. It looked like that. Or somebody got a sheet of like black construction paper, poked holes in it and put lights behind it. I mean, there was even stars in the crescent of the moon. Like, it was just
like a happy face moon with his two eyeballs.
It was a horrible fail, but this was before we could look at stuff on the internet. Now we can pull that up and go, that's fake. And they claimed, the British Faith, that it was their news organization at the time. This is real. They're going to see the stars. And who had been that high to see the stars to verify that it was fake? Nobody. It's same as now. But that was them going 100,000 feet and seeing the stars, taking a picture. Coming back. But I asked that guy, what did the earth look like to you? And I meant to send it from my other email account, but I accidentally sent him the email from my Flat Earth Brothers email. And he's just like, look, I'm not going to tell you that. Just read my book about all of that stuff. And so I'm like, darn it. I thought I was going to get an answer out of this guy. And, he was kind of like, just read my book. And I'm sure he gives his answer that he has to give, because he was a government official.
One of the reasons I named my podcast Contemplating the Cosmos is because it's less conspicuous.
Yeah. You have to hide. I mean, the reason our channel got so big and people were like, oh my gosh, you have to be a shill because your channel's growing huge. Yeah. And it's just one of those things, when the Father opens a door, he opens it. And one of the reasons was I started a channel of a different name and never did much with it. I had a channel that I was wanting to give like wisdom to children who didn't have dads in the picture, and do things like that. But I never had time. I never put anything into it other than a couple videos. And then when I made this channel, I just changed the name, but I never changed any of the tags. So I never had tags with the Flat Earth or anything like that associated with my channel. And I hid my videos under the disguise of like a debunker video. Flat Earther Finds the Curve was one of my first big ones that took off, because the cover, the screen, the thumbnail looks like you're making fun of flat earthers. And so people were like, I got to make fun of flat earthers. And then they see it and they're like, wow. And so I would always kind of do that along the way. And it seemed like YouTube at one point thought I was a debunker, and they were actually promoting me. And then they found out.
He tricked the algorithm. That's
fun. So it was kind of cool while it lasted. And then they found out, and it's like, man, it just went to a stop. And it's like a shadow ban. It's unreal how shadow banned this topic is. And I'm like, it's harmless. You don't see them rioting. You don't see them doing anything that's dangerous. It's just like, hey, the ground you're standing on isn't moving, and there might be a firmament above you. And it's like, this is dangerous. Shut this out. Silence it immediately.
The universe, God's creation.
Yeah. So it is powerful, though. Once it gets us to do things, like we just had a fellowship with people from all different backgrounds that were now geocentric believers or questioning that. And there was a couple people there who had never looked into it. Yeah. And it was just so powerful. The Spirit started moving and testimonies are pouring in. And it was just like, man, this is beautiful. Like what we're doing now, like the Spirit moves and you don't know, it just that one person who's like, man, this is, my faith has been kind of on the edge. And now I'm seeing the truth and it's just waking me up. And it's a beautiful thing. So we really kind of have to not really just take to the streets and start screaming, but unite and just let the Spirit flow and let it do its thing. Cause it was a beautiful experience. And it was just a little, short impromptu gathering.
Yeah. I think that, we should assemble more. And even if it's just on these kind of forums, the scripture, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves as a manner of some, exhort each other more as the day approaches. I feel like we are at the door of something that is really big right now, and this is actually a topic where I get thumbs down like crazy when I start talking like the mark of the beast and man.
It's a big conspiracy. This old book over 2,000 years old that talked about a cashless society, and guess what? We're running out of cash, and the whole world's shutting down. So
and everything's trending toward cryptocurrency systems.
Yeah, and I thought, like last year as I was going about my daily routine, you go to work, you teach your kids, you do your little things you always do, you're comfortable with. But I kept spiritually getting this feeling like all year, all through the fall, all through the spring, that God was saying, this is your last year like this. This is your last go at things. And I kept thinking, nah, it's going to be like this. I'm going to retire in X amount of years and blah, kind of going through that rat race. And I kept hearing that Spirit saying, no, it's going to change. Things are about to change. And I just kept kind of thinking that's me being a conspiracy minded person or, an end time minded person. And all of a sudden, here we are in this craziness. Everything just changed at the drop of a hat. All of a sudden, we're just inundated with, social distance, stay at your house, global pandemic,
Believe it or not, my church has literally just folded.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, they totally abided by this whole social distancing thing, and they closed their doors, and now everything's online. And I pretty much stopped going to my church. I don't believe they operate from the power of God. And there was some things that were, and not just the power, but they operate from fear and things like that. And it's like, I don't want to be part of a body that's, so worried about, because in all honesty, I feel like, not to say that this isn't a real, sickness that people get, but I'm saying that, it's very blown out of proportion, and they're definitely controlling. They're using it as a control tactic, and the mass surveillance thing. I feel like this is a freaking communist takeover. I'm telling you, not just communism. I mean, this is the New World Order. This is what the Hunger Games is. Coming to life.
Yeah, there was a lady back years ago. I think she was rescued in the late 80s, early 90s. She was rescued. She was what you would call a VIP, MK Ultra, if you've heard of that. You guys are familiar with that. She was a sex slave, but a very specific kind, who she serviced politicians and people in the very, very high places. You talk Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, all these people that were Robert C. Byrd, not Robert. Who was it? But who was the guy that became president when Nixon was assassinated? Gerald Ford. She was under his control and other these people back in that era.
JFK.
She talked about behind closed doors. We look at it as left and right, Democrat, Republican, but she said behind closed doors, it's only about two sides, and it has nothing to do. It's all it crosses the political boundaries, but she said it's who's for the New World Order and who's not. And that's the battle behind the scenes. It's not Democrat and Republican. They're really on the same side. They're friends behind. It's a facade that, we're enemies and we're going to, George Bush, Sr. and Jr., Bill Clinton, they all talked about New World Order. And you go back and listen to their talks, and you're like, well, what? I don't even remember them mentioning New World Order. George Bush Sr., he talked about it multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
Very openly. And, they were a member of the Skull and Bones, and they've been witnesses have put them in place of rituals, very satanic rituals. And you're like, oh, well, maybe this Bible and this talk about a one world government and a cashless society, these people really are in on it. You know, we try to think, oh, well, that's way down the road. And I think we're sitting right in the middle of some really biblical prophecies that are just coming true left and right. And you can't deny it anymore.
Yeah. And somebody brought up a good point when we were at the gathering the other day about this whole trust the plan and this huge stuff that's going on. And it's always been in the back of my mind, because I know, don't trust any plan, trust Father only. And he said, that's one of the things they're getting us to do, is to kind of trust this plan. All they're really doing is buying some time. What they're trying to do, they're going to try to carry it out. It's biblical. We can't stop the prophecies from becoming fulfilled. They're going to happen. But that whole trust the plan. And then you think about QAnon, because I really didn't know what that was at first. I was like, Q, what the heck is this? And it's part of that Anonymous. And you remember Anonymous, one of the things they used to always say back when those videos were popular, and they still are, was, we are legion, which is exactly what the demons in the Bible say when they're telling you who they are. Legion. You know, like, it doesn't get any more clear. The enemy sits there and tells you, hey, so some of my minions doing work. And they make it, they disguise themselves as good guys. And I know so many wonderful, awesome, smart, genius people that believe in that stuff and kind of trust that plan. But just be careful if you kind of fall into that category, because it's, people always look for this worldly king, this worldly leader. Like, they were set free out of Egypt. They've seen the Father's hand work. And those chariots are still there on the bottom of the ocean for anyone to investigate and find, where the Father parted the seas. Like, he did do this. But those people like us are foolish and go, no, we want a world leader now. We want like a king. We want like, they're never happy, even when the Father is doing these things. And there's prophecies about the generation to come and the grace that we have. The people who, without seeing those works of his hands, will still obey his commands and love him. Yeah. You know, you got to think about how lonely of a father experience that is when you've created this place, you've put people on it, and you designed them to not choose, you know, to be eternal, but they choose death. And then they keep messing up, and you forgive them. It's been a lot of mercy and grace. And if you look at that video he shared earlier about the wisdom of this world, I was actually compiling verses about his mercy. And I did not realize that throughout the entire Old Testament, there's more verses about his mercy than there are almost in the entire New Testament about his mercy enduring forever. And you just keep pasting those verses in. I was compiling them. And I was like, wow, it's overwhelming how many verses there are. And it's not just in one book. It's like Chronicles, 2nd Chronicles, Psalms, a lot, all the way through Psalms. Of course, he's singing about it. But then it goes on into Jeremiah, the same exact quotes over and over and over, his mercy and his love enduring forever. And when I had that miracle experience, we were talking about the Father being real and angels and all that. When he healed me, that was what opened my eyes to, over a decade ago. Was it when he healed me, I was under that belief that I'm being punished by him. And now that I'm messing up, he's fine. If I died, he'd be like, nah, he died. He was being a bad kid. He's done. But think about, as a parent, your love for your children. If your child was being disobedient, like you said, hey, you know, don't you run out in that road without looking both ways. Always stop, look both ways, and don't get ran over. And your child was just energetic, you know, they're hyper, you gave them too much sugar, whatever. They're hyper and they don't obey, and they run out in the road. They get hit by a car and just, they're in pain. They're hurt. They're not dead. They're down. They probably want to die because they're in that much pain. What sort of parent would you be if you said, serves you right? You know, we don't look at it that way, but the Father looks at us when we mess up and we get out in the world. I'm not saying to live in sin willingly, but when we do mess up, he does not take joy in our suffering. The world, when the Father healed me, it was like that child, like you would pick up your child if they were injured and love them and try to restore them. And that's what he did. He restored me, and he showed me, hey, you were leaning on this world. This world is temporary. It fell away. The things you were leaning on, success, your job, a marriage coming up, all the stuff that fell away and was gone, that's what caused me to fall. And when he healed me, it was like, that's why I wanted you to keep me first. You know, it's like saying, that's why I told you to look both ways. I want you to keep me first so that you don't die. If you this world and sin, the wages of sin, death. And that's what he's trying to prevent us from. Keep me first. Love me with all your heart and do all these things. And I'm going to take care of you and protect you. You know, like my brother was talking about the angels, these armies of angels. Many of you, and including us, just There's times we should have died, but there had to have been some guardian angels, something, because we shouldn't be here. I mean, my brother and I, we grew up, 80s, 90s, doing things unsupervised. We should not be here right now, but the guardian angel experience, and he's got a story. I want him to share it about, you hear about demon possession all the time and all these things with demons. You watch those scary movies and they're so powerful. But when he was studying Satanism and looking into the occult and some of the things, how real that is, there was an angel oppression. I don't think anybody heard of that.
I think your listeners will really get a kick out of this. There was a guy named Jeff Harshbarger that I was going through. I was doing a video about people who were Satanists that became Christians, because for some reason it fascinated me to see people who had been on that side of the spectrum and what was their perspective. They were living in demonic influences. They were casting these spells, witchcraft, all the stuff that you could imagine they do, sacrifice, all that terrible stuff. And a lot of these people were either born into it or they willingly chose to follow that, join a coven or whatever. And this one guy, his testimony just, I was speechless, because he was saying that he became a Satanist. As a child, he was playing with Ouija boards and things like that, and occult stuff, and it fascinated him. That demonic side to all those things fascinated him. He got drawn in and eventually became like a practicing Satanist. And he was under this one high priest, and they moved to a town where this guy was from. His buddy was from this church town, and the people in that town knew that Jeff and his friend were Satanists. They somehow knew that these guys are dabbling in Satanism and they are a big part of this cult. Well, all the people in this church town of this guy started praying for him, and they were like having these prayer sessions for him, and everybody, and the guy Jeff was saying, I couldn't go anywhere without popping in and somebody going, hey, Jesus loves you. And he was like getting really frustrated by it. But he said when he became a Satanist, full-fledged Satanist, that these demons were sharing their power with him, and he became possessed, demonically charged. And he said it was something that he just felt this great power. And he's like, it wasn't my power. They were deceiving me to think it was. But he said that all of a sudden he couldn't feel that power. It was gone. He couldn't act and do the things he was doing. And he went to one of his leaders and he said, I feel like killing myself. I have all the power it's not being released. And I just want to kill myself. And his leader said, you're being angelically oppressed. So he said, what's happening is the prayers of the people around you have activated God's angels against your demons. And now your demons are fighting with each other because of the angels not allowing them to fulfill their will and to fulfill their work. So he was being angelically oppressed by these angels because he was demonically possessed. So then that to me was like, holy cow, here is somebody, his leader, his satanic leader is like, oh yeah, the angels are stopping us. They're stopping our demons. And I was like, well, we gotta realize what our prayers are doing. That there's an interaction and all this evil that's happening. We're talking about these Hollywood celebrities and these cult members. And well, God's power is with us. Just like when we talked about Elijah earlier, open our eyes to the chariots. And here, God's looking for his Moses to take these. And we're like, oh, well, I'll pray for you. And we don't realize that these prayers are powerful. And if we're praying that it's moving things in that world, and that term angelically oppressed, I think we need to understand that that's real. And this guy eventually came to God because of that. And like somebody had to cast the demons out of him. He had to go to somebody who understood that they were really there. He said most of the churches he kept going to didn't know what to do. And they just kind of run him off. Sorry. Because he was trying to tell people, look, I'm demon possessed. But he talked about becoming saved. And I've got a video on that. It's called "Can God Love a Satan or Save a Satanist?" But there was another one I did after that. Oh God, what was it called? Where I talked about that. I said the real reason they're shutting down churches, and I think it ties into that. Our prayers, what they're doing, and when we're gathering together and we're all praying, if these people are really planning something bad, and they really have this new world agenda, and they're trying to fulfill it and work smoothly and clear out this world pandemic, they don't want our prayers to interfere with their demons. So they're going to be saying, don't sing in church, don't go to church, shut down your fellowships. They seem to really crack down on that.
They were saying, if you sing at church, you're going to spread the virus. And it's like, really? It's ridiculous. That's exactly what I'm saying, is that people need to wake up to what's happening. And so again, like when I say that Flat Earth hasn't been on the forefront of my mind, it's definitely what launched me into this mindset. Yeah. And it definitely has taken me into a place where I know now that there is so much deception in the world. It's unbelievable. It's unfathomable. I can't even say it. So the point is that there is a veil over our eyes, and we can't see what's happening around us all the time. But I guess this is kind of what I've kind of gathered over my research and getting closer to where I feel like God has placed me. I almost feel like there's something unlocking inside of me, like a sort of spiritual awareness. And as I, obviously I need to be very mindful of, the spiritual oppression thing, because I feel like the closer you get to the truth, the more it can actually affect you on an emotional level. And like I get depressed sometimes because I feel like we're really we're on this path, this direction, and everybody is oblivious. And the more oblivious that people are, it's like it's depressing. It's like people are just like, like my listener that had to check out because she couldn't handle the thought of, this being a flat earth reality. And it doesn't matter. It's not ultimately the end all, thing. It's really, it's only there to point us to the creator. Right. Yeah. And point us to the deception that's happening in the world and what they're capable of and what they're actually doing. They may be hiding the earth or whatever, but they're also hiding, child trafficking, and they're hiding, ritual, sacrifices and things like that. It's like there's real tangible things that are happening, and it's like we're oblivious. And that's what I want people to start praying. I want people to start researching. I want people to start congregating even more as we see this day approaching. Yeah. So
now that it's not becoming a conspiracy, people are seeing, I mean, everyday people that we know are waking up to the trafficking issue. The news will still paint it as a conspiracy stuff. I mean, we had a gathering, a local get together about that, to Save Our Children. And the news instantly that night said, oh, this is scary because these Q people could be there and conspiracy theorists. And it was people sharing their testimonies, actual victims. And this stuff, I mean, it's no longer a conspiracy, but that's kind of the twist they put on this stuff. I mean, even, I don't know if you remember, those people were finding those hidden RFID chips in the bra tags. And it was like, that's kind of scary. And I thought, well, maybe this is for the manufacturer. And then, but the whole story just vanished. And I thought, man, that's interesting that it just vanished. You don't hear about it anymore because millions of people were like sharing this stuff. And I looked into it, and the fact checkers, of course, pull up like a list of like 5 or 6 things. It's like, oh, we talked to the company and they confirmed they don't use it for that. And I go, well, that's kind of weird. Let me call a drug dealer. Hey, are you dealing drugs? No. All right. He's not. But I said, I would be happy with that if children weren't involved. So I was like, let me call the local company here that sells that exact brand and go, because they say they use them for manufacturing. So I'm going to call these people and I'm like, do you guys use that for monitoring, this stuff? And they go, no, we don't use it for that. And that's all I asked. I said, I was just wanting to know, I saw videos about that there's these RFID chips. Do you use them to keep inventory? And she said, no. And she goes, our products don't even have those chips. And, but we use them for the, inventory purposes. And I was thinking about it and I was like, wait a minute, you don't have them in your product, but you use them for inventory purposes, which is what the fact checker says. So I'm thinking it's like, they kind of have like this script they have to go by. It's like, oh, we don't have them. And I thought that was odd. And I said, so you've never used them to keep inventory, because that's quite an investment. If I'm a multi-million-dollar creator of this product and I'm going to invest in a technology, it better save me money or something, and the fact that they're like, oh, well, we don't even use those, is like mind blowing. And then fact checkers tell you they do. So I was like, we need to fact check these fact checkers, because they seem to be satanic. Anytime there's something truthful, they're like, fact check, partly true, partly false. Yeah. And they're popping up everywhere. It's kind of like censorship is no longer enough. They're like, okay, we can't just shadow ban people and delete stuff. Fact check. And they like, you can't even read something without clicking, okay, I want to look at this. Like, We can't even make our own judgments into what's real. We have to have someone go, hold on, blinders up. You know,
It's false information.
here's the true story. We talked to them, we called them, and they verified they're not doing anything illegal. You know, like that's really a valid research right there. Kind of like the was it Wayfair? It's like,
yeah, I was just thinking about that.
It's
Yeah,
like,
we
oh,
called them.
we
They
weren't
said
doing
they
anything
weren't doing
illegal.
anything.
They weren't. Yeah, they said that, and then they deleted the items that were in question. Like, why would you delete something in question if you have nothing to hide? If I'm selling something that's authentic, and somebody points out that, oh, it's bad, I'm still going to sell it. You know, I'm still going to make money. If somebody wants to pay $13,000 for something they could buy right next to it for $12, you know, why am I going to get rid of that?
That's freaking crazy.
No, it's too crazy. It's the truth.
Yeah, it's like this stuff is out in the open. I mean, so going back to that question, and we kind of addressed it, Michael, like with the, you know, there's things that are being like shown to us by the powers that be, and who is holding them accountable to the point where they feel like they have this need to show us, like keep things out in the open, even though they're doing it discreetly. Like it's almost like they're given some sort of ability, or like given some sort of power to do it because they did their due diligence to tell us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to me that people are maybe it's like they're putting their feelers out there, like, let's see who's actually paying attention. And they realize, oh wait, hardly anybody's paying attention. So we're in the
yeah, like as long as only 10% of the people kind of catch on, or probably less than that, they're okay. It's just, as long as it's not like a wave movement that they can't control.
Yeah. Social experiments. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like, you know, we've all seen the news clips where, you know, it's almost like bloopers. You see the news reels where everybody's saying the exact same thing, and obviously they're given a script.
Yeah.
And you know, I kind of liken the media or the mainstream news as you know, it's really the thermometer to test how people are engaged in news. So like, and you know, and we were talking, you had mentioned something about like, you know, it's not a battle of right and left, but it's a battle of New World Order and against New World Order or whatever. I don't know if you you know, look outside of the Christian perspective as far as like researching, but I kind of follow a channel called Jake the Asshole. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No, I never heard of him.
Yeah, he used to be the flat Earth asshole back in the day.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about.
He actually he put out a video recently, basically saying proof that Trump is a wrestler, or like he is a. Anyways, the point that he was trying to make is that he's friends with Vince McMahon, and they ended up going behind the scenes and planning out this whole thing where they ended up fighting each other out on camera, and so there was a whole like theatrical thing that they just planned out, and really Trump is that person, and everybody is always like, oh, Trump is like the savior, he's the you know, what do they call him, you know,
He's
Cyrus,
like this outsider,
Cyrus or whatever, you know, he was chosen by God. Now granted, I believe God allows people to go into power, but I don't necessarily think that you know, I don't think Trump is necessarily the savior.
Yeah. Try not to put your trust in man. That's the thing that's hard. It's hard to do because we want that savior. But talking about predictive programming with him, I mean, you guys have probably seen that book from the 1800s, The Time Traveler, Baron Trump. You ever see that? Did you ever see that, Charlie?
Wait, what was it?
It was about. It was called The Marvelous Adventures of Baron Trump. Like that's his son.
Yeah. Yep.
You saw that? Yeah.
I reposted your video you did.
Yeah, that was freaky. I was like, you can't make this stuff up. It's like there's this script that was already written a long time ago, the enemy's plan. It's not like they're psychic and they know, you know, part of the future, they know their fate, but like they plan these stuff sometimes way in advance. And then when it comes true, it's like, oh, look at the predictive programming. Oh my gosh, they knew the future. No, they plan the future. They made a pact, you know, in the days of Adam, they made a pact to do what they're going to do. And they're trying to carry it out to corrupt the entire world. I mean, that's why you're seeing this massive amount of corruption because in my lifetime, within the 37 or however years old I am now, I think 37, you lose track after 30. You really, I've seen a major shift in corruption towards our youth. Like, it was so fast that we went from living on a stationary surface, in the 1800s to 1900s. All of a sudden, we're on this ball that's moving hundreds of times faster than sound, spinning. It would have been hard if I would have actually seen a bullet, back then, and thought, okay, they're telling me I live on something that's moving faster than that. It would have taken a lot of faith, but it just takes one little generation of youth, and some teachings to catch on. And you just teach people when they're young this stuff, and we just accept it. And that's kind of what's happening with the culture of the whole, sexualization of kids. And they slowly put it into the subliminal stuff, and then it's in the music. And then it's like, next thing you know, the stuff on Netflix is pretty much adult content.
It's child porn.
And it's people, I have friends on the internet, they're like, it was about the purpose of the movie. And I'm just like, there is no purpose ever for a child to do something sexual for any reason on film, off film, on stage, ever. They are precious children. No reason to ever do that. I mean, and that's just, there's got to be a line in the sand, and it's not a liberal versus a right wing or anything. Our children are precious. They should not be used for those purposes, for any type of entertainment, for any type of documentary, anything. It just shouldn't ever be. And that's the sad reality we live in, is it's like the #1 movie in the world now, in the country, or probably in the world. I don't know. Even though people are logging off of that, it's bringing into light how big of a problem that really is. And the news tried to blame this whole trafficking issue. I forgot to talk about that earlier. I was watching the news, and they're like, this whole human trafficking issue is now becoming prevalent because of the coronavirus lockdown. Because the fact that we had that 3-week lockdown, now all of a sudden everybody's like, man, I need to start trafficking because we're locked down. Like, you're going to really blame something that's been going on this long and is now becoming a problem on the lawn. It also became a fatality of COVID. Like, really?
Yeah.
It's like, seriously, like, that just made me angry. And like you said, with the scripted news, it's not just when you watch that and they play out that script and all these news networks, it's not just Fox News. It's not just CNN. It's every single news network all saying the same stuff. So it's like they all have the same puppeteers up top. I might look at this network and go, well, my Fox News is better than your CNN, but they're all the same. They all have the exact same owners, so to speak, the same people that work for the same powers of darkness that we're talking about. And that's why it's so easy to control all of us with fear and divide us. The hate is powerful.
Yeah. And I think they're giving us a false narrative that there's these Antifa punks who are really just paid actors. And there's a reason why there's always these really high level guys with nice cameras filming all the stuff they're doing. It's a production. It's a show. And they're trying to make us go, we need to stand up against those Antifa punks, when the real enemy is much higher than that. And those guys are being paid to protest. They're playing a part in a movie that we believe is really real, and we want to pick a right side, and that's the way we are. We have our favorite team, and I stand for this team, and you want to, those are the bad guys. We need to know who our real enemy is, and it's not those rioters and those protesters. Listen to a guy, Ronald Bernard, I think was his name. He was speaking in a different language the first time. I was reading his subtitles, but I heard him later speak in English. But he talks about his life and how he was a very corrupt, evil person from a very young age. He was just bent on destroying the world. He had been traumatized and abused as a kid, and he just kind of hated everything, and he wanted to rise to power. And he did. He used his wits and his ways about him and his deceitfulness to do all kinds of things and to get in these very high circles. And he got to where he was helping take truckloads of money from this country to this country, and he said that they always joked that they understood at his level that there were about 8,000 people. I don't know where he got that number from, but he said they control the entire world. And he said they decide what's going to be on the news. And we all think it's just sincerely organic happenings. But he had an event where that took him out of that world, something that kind of shook him. But he was dealing with those people who brought down world economies and controlled the world. And he understood that small group of people were at the highest level and they were doing these things. But he said in his experiences, he went to their churches. And they were a lot of these really high level people went to these satanic churches, and he thought it was for show and it was for fun because they'd have these naked girls dancing around and they'd be drinking whiskey. And he thought, oh, this is what, eccentric rich people do. But he said at one particular ceremony, somebody offered him the chance to partake of it. And he said, what they asked me to do was sacrifice a small child. And he said, of all my corruption and all the things I had done, he said, I couldn't, he said, it just awoken a human side of me, something inside of me that I could not do that, you know, and and it really shook him kind of from that environment. And he left it, you know, he said, I swore an oath that I would never expose these people when I was in that level. You have to go to make it through. You have to take certain oaths. And he said, he said, maybe that's the reason I'm still alive today, is because I didn't. But to me, it really opened my eyes to the fact that when you look to the highest level and you want to know who's at the top, who's pulling the strings, who's doing this stuff, it's not good people. And we seem to think like, oh, it's money. They're all working for money and power. But money doesn't mean anything to these people. You know, they're going to have the money and the power. They can print the money. It's demonically charged, and it comes from the highest level.
Yeah, and he said, and that same guy, he said something along the lines of those 8,000 or plus people that control the world. He said that they create this illusion, like the world, the way that you and I used to see it, is just an illusion that people believe in, and that's really what it was. We've all believed in these illusions, these drawings of everything, you know, whether it be evolution and drawings of how we became monkeys and then people, whatever those illusions are, it's illusions that we've believed in because by design, that they've designed for us. It's the wisdom of this world. And that's, you know, once you start exposing that wisdom of the world, you kind of not become a fool, but like an enemy of those people. And that's why we're not popular. We're not going to be on mainstream TV, and we're all going to be shadow banned and censored, and it's persecution. And you got to be like my brother says that a lot, you know, the fact that we're being persecuted and censored and hated and cussed at, it's a blessing, because it means you're one of the very, very few, you know, that's going to make it through.
Yeah. We are called, and I believe that we're rising up as a remnant in the last times. I feel like we're, you know, given a kind of a responsibility, like the way that Ezekiel describes, like if you don't warn those of the sword coming down on the land, and you're the watchman on the wall, you know, nobody likes to hear the message, but we are given an important responsibility to relay that message. And again, I feel like the flat earth thing is a little easier to accept than like the pedophilia, you know, child trafficking, you know, ritual abuse stuff for me. But some people are more willing to go down that road, like my wife.
Yeah.
Because she thinks that it's just too taboo to even consider the flat earth thing, because, you know, that's kind of the programming.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be what we are. I did not want to become like, I like being considered wise. You know, everyone likes to be the wise person, the know-it-all. And it's tough to throw that away, because there's so many people that get a chip on their shoulder. Like some of the smartest people in this movement, they have this chip on their shoulder, and it scares a lot of people away, because they almost want to be on the offense and the attack of like, well, look, here's all the proofs we have. I mean, we have tens of thousands, you know, and you almost get arrogant, and you have to be humble and know, like, yes, we're looked at as a fool. And that's tough, because you've received so much anger. And I don't really understand the anger, though, because I can remember before I looked into all this and even found out, you know, the truth behind it and why they would lie in the first place, which is the most important thing to find out. I just remember like not having any anger, just thinking those people are dumb. You know, like we were taught that they were dumb. So of course they're dumb. Our ancestors were really dumb. They believed in the edge. And then here came Christopher Columbus to go and, you know, explore and discover something he thought was something else. And now we know it's a spherical object. Like, so it's hard for me to understand the anger, but I can also understand it's like, okay, it's 2020. We've, you know, people are like, we're going to Mars. How can you guys still exist? But the deception is that great. It really is that great. I almost wanted to give a standing ovation when I figured out how they've pulled all this off, why they pulled it off, but basically how that I could have been deceived and been in love with the lies. Like I was in love with, I mean, it was one of my favorite things to look into and to watch, especially science fiction, you know, all the space travel stuff. So that was one of my.
Oh yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of Interstellar and all the Star Trek movies that were coming out.
Yeah. I to this day, I like Interstellar. I mean, I like the whole space concept. I mean, it's
I
entertaining.
think almost the hardest hurdle for me to get past was like, how is the Earth flat if there's space? You know,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that space, and then someone's like, "Oh, space is fake," and I'm like, "But they're in." And then you start seeing all the NASA fails where they're on a, they're using augmented reality, they're on a wire, and then the camera fails, and it's just like you keep seeing all their mistakes. You're like, well, why would they be faking it if it is really real? They say it is.
Well, they got away with it better in the early days, when like with the STS missions, when they were just sending us highlight videos. I think where it really started getting hard for them is around like 2015, when all this awakening was happening, and they were being challenged to do the stuff that we knew we had, like the live, like we're doing right here. If I'm doing something deceitful and it's pre-filmed, kind of like the moon landings and all that stuff, even though they were Skyping the moon back then, that it's harder to get away with it when it's filmed live. And I think that's like the moon landings when they aired in Australia before they aired in America. There was like a scene where like a Coke bottle fell over and, something weird, but then it gets erased by the time it gets to America. It's like, okay. And then nobody ever sees or hears about that again. So doing it live is what made it challenging. And now they're getting really good to where they can just do the same scene over and over and over. And it hardly ever fails over the past like year. They've hardly ever repeated the same mistakes. That's why they spend more money than Hollywood on their productions.
You ever notice how we don't hear that much from NASA anymore? We hear more from SpaceX.
Yep. That's it. And people will go,
and SpaceX is NASA.
Yeah. People will go,
it's almost like the alter ego. They're like they changed from NASA because NASA is exposed now. Now they're going to SpaceX, even though SpaceX is still exposed. But
it's like the NASA astronauts get on their ship. Like, what? I thought you guys are a different entity. Oh wait, no, you're still NASA.
Yeah. It's really strange because the whole Elon Musk thing goes really deep too. If people look into that, you find out that Warner von Braun, the guy, what's that?
Neuralink is a huge part of all of this.
Yes, intermixing, artificial intelligence with humans. So he serves a purpose, and there's some cool things about him. Me and Michael had some inside information on him that was like mind blowing. But I mean, Warner von Braun wrote a book about colonization of Mars before he became a Christian, and he knew the plan that was unfolding. He warned people about the alien deception to come and all that. But his book, when you colonize Mars, the leader of that colony was going to be given the title Elon. Yeah. And he wrote that before Elon was even born. And so, and the rockets in his book look like SpaceX rockets. Like it's really one of those things like, would they really put this out there? But we know a flat earther. I can't mention any names or if who the person was. I vowed not to do that because he said he didn't want to endanger them. But this person said that they were taught, the Musk family was taught that the Earth, they weren't taught that the Earth was a globe. They were taught something totally different, and it kind of drew some stuff from the law.
He was at a college campus and he ran into somebody who said, "I'm Elon Musk's nephew."
You can't. You just gave away the secret. Here you go. I was trying not to say that. I told the guy I wouldn't say that.
No one's listening to this podcast, right?
I know. You got to keep your word, man. I don't know. I never.
No, he said
verbally said.
We never said his name. We're good.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, this person said that we weren't taught that. We were taught that Earth is on the back of Leviathan, and that kind of brings out stuff from the Lost Book. I was like, what? That's weird. Why would they bring up these names? Because the Leviathan, Behemoth, and all the stuff that kind of ties into that. I just thought that was interesting. They were taught that. So I don't know how. I know their family's in the occult. He's obviously satanic, and it's hard to pray for people like that. It's like, man, he's deceiving so many people. How can or should we pray for people like that? And that's kind of a challenge we face. I try to. It's hard because I'm like, man, I just want to expose them, and but praying for them at the same time.
By the way, see, I really like to research or like get into the meat of the scripture and stuff too. And like the whole flat Earth or the biblical base Earth reality or whatever is like a literal meaning straight from the Bible. And now I still think that there's a lot of metaphor or allegory that might be like a type and shadow, you might say. So, Jesus always speaks in parables and things like that. I feel like there's a lot of that going on, but there's also, it doesn't take away from the actual story. It's not like it didn't happen. It's more like they use like an allegory to emphasize a certain aspect of it or something. I don't know. So these are, and it's not just the Bible. I'm saying that there's a lot of ancient writings, and you had said that a lot of people believe that, you know, people from the past were not as intelligent as they are now, when in reality they built structures that were much more vast and impossible. You know, like the pyramids and these large, you know, whatever. I mean, there were so many things that they had technology that we can't wrap our heads around. But I just feel like, where was I going with this? I guess the bottom line is that there's just so much more. There's a bigger picture that I think that people need to understand, as far as, you know, like contemplating the cosmos, I guess. So like, you know, it's not just the literal meaning of things, is what I'm trying to say. There's a spiritual meaning behind a lot of this stuff. And I think that people need to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the somebody, I was interviewing this guy who could speak Italian, because I'd found this ancient, you know, that map from around the time Columbus was doing all of his stuff. This guy had a world map that looks like the United Nations logos. It looks like the equidistant maps we have now, or the flat Earth maps. And this guy was documenting things along his journey. And you see these pictures of like these Baphomet looking creatures. And he's talking about demons. He's talking about these things that just seemed to be common knowledge back then. And I'm like, this guy was not a science fiction writer. He was an explorer documenting his journey. He wasn't trying to sell a kid's book. And he's talking about these powers of darkness, these demons that go into people, these things. And he was drawing what they look like. And I thought that was weird, you know, especially the Baphomet. You know, you see the half human, half goat looking creature. And I mean, the thing looks exactly, to me, it looks a lot like the sable antelope, which has the same exact amount of chromosomes as a human, and things like that. And so you wonder, what kind of things were they doing back then? Were there things that were more open knowledge back then that have just been kind of like a reset and sort of hidden, and now they're science fiction, like the Clash of the Titans and all the things that stem from these false gods that we learned was, you know, the Nephilim and things like that. It's an interesting mix when you start finding out true history. And a lot of the stuff we believe, and even the names of stuff like planets and all that, come from that hidden ancient type of truth. And so it's cool to look into that stuff. But the important thing is to let the Father be true and really just prove all things. You know, there's a lot of liars, and not always intentional. Teachers aren't evil. You know, people from certain denominations that you may not like are not evil. They're misled. You know, pray for them, pray for yourself, stay humble when you're finding this stuff out, because once you become full to the world and you become wise to the Father's wisdom and you understand that, it almost makes you feel like, wow, I'm wise now, you know. But don't get a big head. Know that you still don't know anything. We still are scraping the surface until he shows us everything, you know. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you guys. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark, but I just I wanted to say real quick, I'm going to be doing another interview with somebody from the channel Mental Boost. He's been doing a lot of research on the West fires and dew weapons and stuff like that. I don't know if you're familiar with like direct energy weapons.
Direct energy,
yeah. That stuff is crazy. I mean, and he has a lot of insight, and he's been like looking under the microscope and looking at the weird anomalies and like the molten metal that comes from like. Anyways, I wanted to point that out for the listeners that might be interested in that. Coming up, and it's not going to be a live stream. He doesn't want to really, he's kind of an introvert, so he doesn't want to do anything live, but I'm going to definitely pick his brain about that stuff. And is there anything that you guys want to touch on right before? I mean, is there anybody in the chat that wants to ask anything? We're just another minute before the 2-hour mark. I don't know how you guys are doing, but
oh yeah, we're good.
Yeah, great. Yeah, just ask away. Any questions you guys have, send us an email anytime. I mean, I try to answer, if you're on one of my videos commenting, I try to answer and look at every comment so I could find people that are investigating. We're not going to be angry at you if you have questions. We're not going to shun you for saying, well, this is ridiculous because of this. You know, like the Father loves you. We love you. It's not about us. It's about him and finding truth. So ask away. And if you're here from our channel, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because Charlie is awesome. And we're so fortunate the Father brought our paths together to cross, you know, so you can find all of us.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. And also anybody that hasn't been to Josh and Michael's Flat Earth Brothers channel, and then Grace and Truth Fellowship. Definitely go check those out. I mean, they're both very awesome guys that have really drawn me in with the content they're putting out. So, so it's just been a pleasure that I would have an opportunity to speak to you guys, especially for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys want to wrap it up, or if there's anybody in the chat that just wants to say one more thing, or if you guys have anything that you want to say last second here. Or,
thanks for listening to us, guys. If you were able to hang in there with us, and like he said, email us at any time. I'm a Grace and Truth channel at gmail.com. If you have any questions for me and Josh, but it's been a blessing getting to talk to you, Charlie, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, let's keep in touch. And so again, if there's anything that you want to touch on as far as like near-death experiences, or you want to get into the meat more on that, I've heard or read 500 to 600 near-death experiences. I've actually interviewed a lot of people that had near-death experiences now. I feel like it's a very important topic to consider when it comes to understanding what might come after we die. And again, it can be very convoluted and confusing if you don't really have a basis for where you're approaching it from. Because I feel like sometimes you have to eat the meat and spit out the bones, even when you're hearing somebody's,
and with those near-death experiences, I think the big thing to look at is when you're hearing somebody speak on that is the biblical timeline of events, and that the judgment is future. And in these visions, God can show you what's to come. And I think a lot of us believe that what someone's seeing when they're going through this is it's something that's happening right now. But what God is showing us a lot of times is the vision of the future judgment, the thing that's going to happen. There's in the future, the dead in Christ are going to rise first, and all these things that haven't happened yet. I think we get confused into thinking that we go straight up to heaven when we die, or we go straight to this fiery judgment when we die. And I think that misleads people to the future judgment that will biblically come, that these people will be thrown into a lake of fire as the second death. But
keyword death. He has a teaching about that. It's controversial. The truth is always going to kind of rub people the wrong way, because we were raised in the wisdom of this world and the lies that kind of lead people away from our loving Father. And one of those is this: you see people on a street corner, it's always, you're going to burn in hell forever. If you don't choose this path, you're going to burn forever. And the Father's love is different. And when you read John 3:16, almost any Christian, mainstream Christian, lukewarm Christian can quote that. And it says the word perish. You had either have everlasting life or you perish. It's like he loves us so much, he's going to send his son. But if you don't choose that, he wants you to burn forever and suffer, which there is an eternal punishment of death. Death is eternal. You cannot undo death. Once you die that second death, you're dead. So that's a big thing. It's a whole, 2-hour conversation. And sorry, I unplugged my lamp here. But it's a 2-hour conversation or longer. It's a deep dive into the word, and it's angered people to they just left my channel. They were like, I'm subscribed, but you're blasphemous, I'm leaving. And you just got to trust the Father, look into the ancient meaning of these words, the word hell, what this means. And it's a cool avenue to go down to find the truth there, because it's definitely misleading millions of people.
Yeah, I have a different take on hell than I did at one point. I mean, I feel like, and I'm not saying there isn't some sort of outer darkness or transition where we are separated from God or whatever, but I almost take it as far as saying that anybody who comes to the Father has to come through Jesus. Jesus even could come to you in the valley of the shadow of death, and that's my thought of where people are in outer darkness, and then you see this light pinpoint that turns into this massive light where they're interacting with Jesus in a near-death experience. Mm-hmm. And I personally feel like that transcends this reality, but that could actually be what the scriptures are referring to. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could be. And
if you haven't checked out, I've got a video on hell, and it's specific to that afterlife, the part of death, like when you die. And there's a parable of Lazarus and the rich man, and he looks up and and they talk about a flame. which is a very misunderstood, mistranslated verse. But check out this teaching. I think the teaching was called why is hell missing from the ancient manuscripts? Or I can't remember the name of the video specifically, but we've got a video on hell that if you go in and go to that, it goes through a biblical account of the judgment, when it is, what is it? Is this fire that burns the wicked going to burn forever, and all this stuff? And it's one of those interesting topics that we had a guy recently write us a letter, and he goes, man, I was about to send you this scathing letter of like how stupid you were for putting this teaching out here and how wrong you are. And he goes, then God just showed me it was true, and I started reading it, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I've been wrong this whole time. And he said, this might be the biggest, uncovering of God's true nature out of any of the teachings he's ever read, because it shows that God loves you so much that he wants you to live forever and not perish. Just like John 3:16 said, but we're so stuck in a mistranslated version of scripture and this angry, vengeful, wrathful God that it kind of separates us from truly loving him and truly understanding what is he trying to save us from? What is he trying to give us? What's the alternative? Because we usually tell people God loves you, but if you die and he didn't get saved, you're going to burn forever and ever and ever. So it's like, I think there's a misrepresentation of our loving Father, and we can only get the true story if we really dig deep and look at the truth in Scripture.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's just a lot to unpack, and honestly, I've kind of, I'm not going to say that I've uprooted myself from my roots, but I definitely have come to a broader understanding of things that it's like anybody that's willing to go down the rabbit hole, you figure things out, and I think that this, I mean, even, sorry, we're kind of like going all these different directions, but this is important to me. I'll just tell you real quick. So when you actually hear about the New Jerusalem, right? It's also referring to Jesus as Jesus is referred to as the cornerstone.
Yes.
And then we'll be given a white stone. And then I think right after that it talks about the New Jerusalem. And I think that what it's really referring to is that each of these stones are assembled into a temple, and we are the temple that is being described. And the spiritual temple that is us congregating, I guess you could say. And then you see this New Jerusalem descending from heaven onto the earth. And when you actually read the description of what the New Jerusalem is, it has streets of gold, it has a pearly gate, and it really is talking about heaven on earth. So I don't know, but again, these are things that are like the metaphors that I was talking about. It's not straight up like this is it could be a physical building, I don't know, but it also is us assembled into this this massive collaboration of God's hands and feet, and I think it's freaking crazy. I think it's awesome.
Oh
yeah.
Anyways, I don't know if you ever heard it from that perspective, but I don't know, guys. I think that we should call it a night. My wife's waiting.
Mine too.
And you guys are up late. You're in the east.
Yeah.
My wife's out with her friends right now. She keeps calling me. I don't know what she wants me to do.
No, I appreciate you guys staying up late. I'm over in Boise, Idaho, but I think you're in Georgia, right?
Yeah, Georgia.
So, So I don't know. I'll touch base with you guys down the road, and we'll keep in touch, and whatever happens and changes. If I bring you guys on again, I hope you're open to it. And
for real,
anytime.
Yeah. So, anyways, everybody in the chat, we appreciate you being civil and following everything we're talking about, and God bless everybody, and have a wonderful night.
Yeah. Y'all have a good night.
Father's love to all of you.
All right. See you guys.
See you.
All right.